А сколько человек хотят перевод на русский язык? Один вижу. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Дело в том, что проблема в том, что сначала мы будем говорить, сначала русские люди будут что-то говорить, а потом мы будем все это обсуждать с Фредом. И у нас дилемма, говорить ли нам всем по-русски, а ему переводить. И потом будет у нас с ним дискуссия. Или мы все будем говорить по-английски, ничего не переводить, и потом у нас будет дискуссия.
Английский.
Ну, значит, по-английски превалируем. Хорошо.
English. I was just saying that.
Ну что, говорить по-английски, да?
Hello.
Hello, guys. Since we started talking in English, this would be probably the first barrier to enter Western markets. And yeah, I know it would be a little bit funny with our accent, but it will be much more understandable for you, which is a benefit. And we're also looking for benefits. Before the other guys start doing slides, I don't have any again. So I can start a discussion regarding what happened for the last 15 years of our experience doing business with the West. I would say doing successful business with the West. And when we go to say 1996, doing any international sales of the games developed in Russia were kind of know-how. It was a very, very innovative approach, since most of the games which were developed here mostly were produced for the local market. However, there were a lot of difficulties about it. So since we're not just talking about how to make them and how to develop them, but also one of the most important questions is how to fund them. The first initial stage, so I would say that there were 3 stages for the last 15 years, and each stage of 5 years. So the first stage when developers were mostly immature, and there was no international recognition for their games that in general could be developed in Russia for international markets. Most of the terms dealing with the international publishers were pretty difficult. So basically, when it comes down to the funding of your game, you had to go to the publisher and say, okay guys, we give away all the rights we have to use. Basically, it's a work for hire contracts. And I think Fred will talk a little bit more about pitfalls on this way. However, this, on the bright side, this gave us an opportunity to start doing games for international markets. On the other hand, the terms of the agreements were very, very tough. So basically, publishers were acting as investors in the games, getting up to 80% of your profit margins. And most of the money which you could count back then was advance payments, and most of the companies who were working and selling games were not getting any royalty, because it was very hard to deal with the tier 1 publishers, first of all. So most of the publishers we dealt with were tier 2 or tier 3. They were not very, very good at marketing, and it was very hard for them to sell and position and market your game for the local audience. However, if you go take a look at the Alex one, which was probably one of the first pretty successful games in the international market, there are a lot of funny stories how we actually was selling, and because there was no internet, it was an internet, but generally it was very, very poor, and it was not accessible from from Russia, we were actually downloading the distributes through the direct modem dial-up connection with the publisher, and so on and so forth. So it was very hard to find even the list of the publishers, not even thinking about who is the tier 1, who is the tier 2, who is the tier 3. And so the best way to get it was basically to go to the show, to the conference, and get the proceedings, and then it basically was getting the car and driving through them, and eventually we kind of was signing the first contract. But anyway, from a development perspective, this was very, very difficult because the publishers were getting lots of margins, they were getting all the IP, they didn't give you any rights and anything, and basically not getting any money later as a royalties. The second stage, it was the second 5 years, and it was the stage where you can hold some IP. So basically you can develop your game, and you could use local funding of local publishers to do it. However, when you go out and sell the game to the international publishers, you do the licensing deals. So licensing deals are much better than work for hire, because this give you the platform for the long-term strategic development of the IP. One of the first titles in this strategy was Blitzkrieg, in our case, and it was very, very successful. So we've made a lot of royalties, and we kept the IP. We used the IP later on, so it was not just making money, but also providing a stable long-term growth and raising valuation for the company. So the first stage was kind of educating ourselves how to make the game. The second was how to make the initial money based on the property, doing with the West. However, publishers still getting about 80% of the margin, and you're getting just 20. 20, 25, it depends on the platform, on a publisher deal, etc., but generally 25% of royalty rate was pretty standard, and it's still pretty standard. And so later, in the next 5 years, the new model emerged, and this model was about getting investment into the company and selling the game directly to the end users, or on much better terms, licensing to their international distributors, not necessarily publishers in this particular way, and doing direct sales to the customers. The benefits for this approach is pretty obvious, because in this case you're not giving away a lot of revenue to the distributor or publisher, because you're getting it directly, but you need to give away this, the portion of the company to the investors who actually step into it, but your proportion is substantially better. So instead of saying, dealing with the publisher and giving away 80% for a particular project, you start building valuation for the company, giving away, say, 30, 40, whatever, percent of your company to the investor to step into, to basically invest in the company, so give a share of the company, but it's much smaller share, which gives you enough funding to develop a game and then go directly. So it's obvious that this model is much more effective from the economical standpoint. However, it was not possible to use this model before, because when you're starting in valuation are pretty low, nobody believes that you can actually do anything. In the second stage, there was no any, as a second part, there was no any venture funds in Russia, and convincing international funds to put money into the Russian company was kind of impossible, I would say. This is the smallest word I can use here.